There are wounds we never speak of, because the ones who should have listened were the ones who caused them. And so you go on years later, with the wound tucked beneath routine, as if time heals, when in truth, it just covers it with silence. Like and subscribe to the channel, because here, there's still time to turn your wounds into bridges. Your story matters, even if it's never been told. After 50, we carry more than memories. We carry secrets, little episodes that were never talked about, screams that died in our throats, and we learned, or were forced, to keep them to not shake the family, to avoid conflict, to not seem too dramatic. But there are silences that aren't choices. They're prisons with invisible walls. Remember that time someone hurt you with words, and you smiled so you wouldn't seem weak? Or when something serious happened, and they said, "Let it go," and you did. Let it go, as if it didn't still hurt every single day. After 50, the body hides less than the soul, but the soul is still full of, "I've never told this to anyone." This video is for you, the one who keeps it in, who swallows it down, who pretends to have forgotten, but deep down, just wanted a hug that says, "I believe you." I remember exactly how that day smelled. It was raining gently, one of those rains that seem to wash the whole world, except your insides. I was 38, coming home from work, when I heard a sentence I've never forgotten. "You're too sensitive, always making things up." It was like a punch, but no one saw it. The pain was silent, because it didn't bleed. It bled inward. In that moment, all I wanted was someone to say, "Tell me, I'm here." But there was only silence, and hurry, and the feeling that I was too complicated to love. So I went quiet. I got home, took off my shoes, went straight to wash the dishes, as if my pain didn't matter, as if it was smaller than the dinner that needed cooking, or the bills that needed paying, and it stayed there, quiet, living inside. That was the day I became a secret, not because I wanted to hide, but because I understood, or believed, that no one would listen without judging. And when you realize that, you start hiding even from yourself. Today, looking back, I know that's when my voice began to disappear. Not outwardly, but inwardly. I started smiling too much, agreeing with everything, avoiding problems. But inside, I was screaming for a space where my pain could exist without being questioned. My mouth went quiet, but my body began to scream. The worst kind of loneliness is not being able to trust your own truth. And maybe you have that day too, the one you've never told anyone, the one that became a stone in your chest, and no one ever noticed. But if you still remember, it's because it still hurts. And if it still hurts, it can still be healed. I finally built up the courage. After years of swallowing pain, I decided to speak. Not with anger, not pointing fingers. I spoke with a trembling heart, but honestly, that really hurt me. I just wanted you to know. The response? You misunderstood. Or worse. Wow. Still going on about that. It was like, on top of the pain, I also had to carry the guilt for feeling it. I found myself trying to justify what was obvious, as if my sadness needed to pass a public jury. I was the victim, and I became the problem. After that, I shut down completely, because I understood, or was forced to understand, that the world prefers those who pretend to be okay, that there are pains people only respect if they feel them too, and that after 50, talking about the past is almost taboo. They say we need to move on, as if not having healed is some sort of flaw. But what no one sees is that every time we're invalidated, the pain buries itself deeper and starts to grow inside like a twisted tree root, pushing on everything, distorting even the way we breathe. I didn't stay quiet because I was strong. I stayed quiet because no one was listening with their heart. Being disbelieved hurts more than being hurt. After that, I learned to smile, to avoid explanations, to change the subject, to pretend I didn't remember. And that pretending became routine, became defense, became who I turned into. But sometimes, I still feel the urge to say, I didn't make up what I felt. I just survived what you didn't want to see. And if you've ever been called too sensitive, Maybe you've just learned to feel where others prefer to look away. It doesn't throb every day. It doesn't wake me up in the night. It doesn't show up on scans, but it's there, like a forgotten box in the back of a closet, that I know exactly where it is. And sometimes it just falls out on its own. No warning, no mercy. This pain, born long ago, didn't fade with time. It aged with me, changed color, changed tone, but never left. Maybe because it was never truly heard. People say time heals, but no one talks about how time also settles. And what we don't deal with just settles in. Today I have more wrinkles, more calm, but also more awareness of what's unresolved. I feel it in the simplest moments, in a smell that takes me back, in a song that cuts through the afternoon, in a glance that reminds me of someone who left without ever hearing me. I've tried to convince myself that's in the past, but some pains don't go away. They settle in, and if we don't tend to them, they become part of the furniture of the soul. What goes unsaid also grows old, but never dies. Some silences quietly make us sick. Today I realize what weighs me down most isn't what happened. It's what I couldn't say. It's what I didn't know how to feel out loud. And maybe that's why I'm here. Not to accuse the past, but to recognize myself in it. Because as long as the wound exists, there's still time to heal. If it hurt to read this, it's because that part of you still wants to be heard. In my family, there were things that simply didn't exist. Even when they hurt, even when they were right there in the living room, between dinner plates and the TV on. It was like everyone knew, but no one was allowed to name it. There was an unspoken rule. We don't talk about that. And I obeyed, because as a child, you want to belong. As a teenager, you want to survive. And even after 50, you're still afraid of being the only one who saw what everyone else pretended not to. I remember my mother's averted eyes. I remember sentences cut off midway. I remember how I learned to keep quiet to preserve the peace, that so-called peace that felt more like a straitjacket stitched with good manners. Speaking meant breaking the image, messing up Sunday lunch, hearing, "Why bring that up now?" But who said you can resurrect what was never buried? That pact of silence turned into soul weariness. The feeling of carrying guilt for remembering what others worked so hard to forget. And over time, that weight starts to change you. We become too quiet, too angry, too guarded, because living as if nothing happened comes at a price. I was taught to protect others from what hurt me. The silence that protected the family destroyed my right to feel. Now looking back, I see I didn't want revenge or drama. I just wanted to say, that hurt me, and I have the right to remember. And maybe your story also has parts no one wanted to hear, but that you never stopped feeling. It shows up where no one sees, in how tightly I hold my coffee cup, always firmer than necessary, in the rush to reply with short messages, in the discomfort when receiving affection, like I don't know where to place my hands. There are pains that were never named, but became habits. They became ways of walking, of looking, of avoiding hugs that last too long. The other day, a friend said to me, "You always seem like you're apologizing just for existing." And that unraveled me, because she was right. I got used to taking up little space, to not asking for much, to not being a bother. That old pain trickled into my routines, disguising itself as politeness, shyness, practicality. But deep down, I just learned not to expect too much, because when I did, I got disappointed. And when I spoke, I was ignored. So now I seem strong, but I'm just tired. You can hide pain for decades, but it always finds a way to breathe. Even silence has an accent, the one of someone who gave up explaining. And it's not that I don't want connection. It's just that my body hasn't yet learned it's safe to relax. That now there are people who listen. That now maybe I am safe. If you also protect yourself in little ways, know this. It's not weakness. It's history. And every story can be rewritten, even after 50. I spent my life choosing my words carefully, measuring my tone, reading other people's faces before saying it. I didn't want to upset, disturb, or be difficult. And in all that caution, I lost myself. Speaking became risky. Feeling became shameful. Remembering became weakness. But now, after 50, something inside me shifted. I don't know if it's the exhaustion from pretending or the courage that only age can bring, but I do know this. I no longer want to protect myself from what's already over. I want to say what I've held back. I want to remember without apologizing. I want to speak without fear of seeming fragile, because honestly, being fragile is also human, and I've spent too long trying to seem made of stone. Today, if someone asks me, do you still feel that? Maybe I'll say, yes. But now I know how to care for it. Telling what hurt me doesn't change the past, but it changes the weight I carry in the present. After 50, I don't want silence as defense anymore. I want truth as a path. If someone listens, great. If not, that's okay too, because finally, I've listened to myself. And maybe that was the most important conversation of my life. You still have time to remember, to speak, to be free. You know, for a long time I thought talking about pain was like reopening a wound. But now I understand. What hurts isn't remembering, it's pretending it never happened. We learn to swallow, to gloss over, to play pretend. But it comes at a price. The cost of disconnecting from ourselves, of looking in the mirror and no longer recognizing the person there, of living as a background character in our own story. After 50, I realized there was still time. Time to name the pain without shame. Time to say, this broke me, without fear of seeming weak. Time to turn silence into a bridge. Not to shout, but to hear myself again. And maybe what I long to hear from others. An apology, and I believe you, might never come. But surprisingly, I can give it to myself. I can look at myself with kindness. I can welcome what I felt, without having to explain it to anyone. Maybe the love I was hoping for by telling my story was the love I needed to give myself. Today, I'm not lost. I've just arrived in myself. It's not about reopening the wound. It's about not letting it define who you are. You still have time to embrace your story, to tell it, even if just to yourself, and maybe to live the rest of your life a little less afraid to feel, because feeling was never weakness. It was always courage. If you felt something in this video, leave a in the comments. I read them like old letters, the kind that were never delivered, but are still waiting for a reply. And tell me, what part of your story have you stayed silent about for too long? You still have time to tell it, even if it's only to yourself. Now don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and see you in my next video.